everybody, my name is Kyle39. Welcome back to another video. Today, in this one, it's going to be my complete in-depth guide on the new Enneacraft archetype that's going to be released in Phantom Revenge. Yeah, as you can see, the video is a little bit longer, but there will be timestamps in the description down below to kind of help you skip toward what you are looking for. At the beginning, we'll be doing a little bit of a card analysis. This is for players that don't know what the new cards do, to help them understand what those cards do. After that, we'll be doing a deck profile and me explaining what the deck is trying to do, and then ratios and stuff like that. And then after that will be the combos using that deck profile. But yeah, if you do enjoy this type of video, please consider leaving a like on the video to help me understand that you do like these type of videos. And then if you do like my content on the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel as well. Without further ado though, let's get straight into the video. Alrighty, now on to the card analysis portion of the video here. So, Enneacraft has 11 total archetypal cards. 8 of them being main deck monsters, and then 3 of them being spells, 1 of them a field spell, and then the other 2 being normal spell cards. So, we'll start off with the monsters first. So, they are pendulum monsters, and they all have 0 skills, which might be a little bit weird. You might be asking, this is a pendulum archetype, shouldn't they have like a high skill to kind of help them pendulum someone? Which is kind of a correct question to ask, but once you get into the game plan of this deck, you'll quickly realize this deck doesn't really want to pendulum summon. They just happen to be pendulum monsters. This is not a deck that's trying to pendulum summon, but it's still something to point out that they're all 0 skills. They do not have a high skill. So if you want to try to pendulum summon, you would have to play a high skill that's outside the archetype. But again, it's one of those things the archetype doesn't necessarily want to pendulum summon anyway. So they have 4 level 1 monsters, and then they have 4 level 9 monsters in the archetype. So we'll start off with the level 1 monsters first. So we'll start off with Enneacraft Yugioh. Its pendulum effect here is each time a monster is flipped face up, place 1 sequestering counter on this card. I'm definitely mispronouncing that, but you get to place a counter on this card. Now, note that because every single pendulum monster has that pendulum effect, where each time a monster is flipped face up, you can place a counter on this card. That does matter once we get into the spell cards, but just note of that every pendulum monster has that top pendulum effect, where each time a monster is flipped face up, you get to place a counter on this card. And then the bottom effect of the pendulum effect here is you can pay 900 life points, reveal 3 Enneacraft cards from your deck. Your opponent randomly picks 1 for you to add to your hand. Also shuffle the rest back into your deck, and you can only use this effect once per turn. Now, another thing to note is even though that is a hard once per turn, all the level 1s have that bottom pendulum effect, where you can place or reveal 3 Enneacraft monsters or Enneacraft cards from your deck. Your opponent randomly picks 1 for you to add to your hand, and then you shuffle the rest back into the deck. That effect applies to every level 1 in the archetype. Every level 1 has that second pendulum effect as well. So even though it's a hard once per turn, as long as you can get to all 4 copies of the level 1, you can theoretically do it 4 times in a turn if you really want to. So a really, really nice effect there as well, because it doesn't say it has to be different names as well, so you can just choose 3 of the same name card to guarantee the search as well. So a really good pendulum effect there that also every level 1 has as well. Now on to the monster effect here. You can reveal this card in your hand, special summon 1 monster from your hand in face down defense position. You cannot special summon the turn you activate this effect except face down defense position. So another thing to note about that monster effect is that every one of the pendulum monsters also have that top monster effect, where you can reveal this card, special a monster in face down defense position, and then you're locked from, special summoning except for face down defense position. That applies to every single one of the pendulum monsters in the deck. Even the level 9s have that effect as well. So again, something just to note as well. And then when an opponent activates a monster effect in the hand, quick effect, you can change this set card to face up defense position, add an Enneacraft card from your deck to your hand, and then if this card is flipped face up, destroy 1 monster your opponent controls. So a really solid effect there. So basically, when your opponent activates a monster from the hand, so like any hand trap in today's metagame, you can just flip this card up and then search for an Enneacraft card. And then once this card is flipped face up, you can destroy a monster your opponent controls non-targeting. Very, very solid. So basically makes it where it's kind of acts as a trap card. You react to something by flipping it face up, or when it's face down, you flip it face up, search for an Enneacraft card, and then once it's flipped, you get to destroy a monster your opponent controls. Really solid card there. So that is it for Yugioh. Now on to Tormeria. Yeah, I'm definitely going to mispronounce a lot of cards in this one. I do apologize about that. But like we just said, it has the same pendulum effect where each time you place or flip a card face up, you can place a counter on this card. And then it also has the same bottom effect where you can pay 900 life points, reveal 3 Enneacraft cards. Your opponent randomly picks one for you to add to your hand, and then shuffle the rest back into the deck. And then for the monster effect, again, it can do the same thing where you can reveal this card, special summon a monster from your hand in face down defense position, and then you cannot special summon the turn you activate that effect except for in face down defense position. Now, its difference here is when your opponent activates a card or effect that includes the effect to special summon a monster. Quick effect, you can change this set card to face-up defense position, add an Enneacraft card from your deck to your hand, and then if this card is flipped face-up, you get to negate the effects of one effect monster your opponent controls. So it pretty much has a kind of a similar effect to what Yugioh does, but in a different context. So Yugioh has to make it where when your opponent activates a card in hand, it can flip and then search for an Enneacraft card. Termaria is when your opponent activates a card that includes the effect to special summon, then it can flip and then search for a Enneacraft card. So a little bit of it can search, it's pretty much a similar effect because they can both search for Enneacraft cards once they're, for that effect, but they have both different trigger conditions. You know, Yugioh has to see a monster activate in hand. Termaria has to see a card attempt to special summon a card, which is very solid. And then it has a different bottom effect. Once it's flipped face up, you get to negate a face up effect monster your opponent controls. So this one can destroy a card or a monster. This one can destroy or negate a face up monster your opponent controls as well. So again, very similar effects, but a little bit of a difference. It's pretty much the idea of what all the Enneacraft stuff is. Now on to Alcaneria. Again, going to be mispronouncing these cards. So again, has the same pendulum effect where you can place a counter once a monster is flipped face up, and then the same bottom effect where you can pay 900 life points, reveal 3 Enneacraft cards. So same pendulum effect there. Monster effect, again, same top effect where you can reveal this this card and then special monster in face down defense position. But its difference is when an opponent activates a card or effect in the graveyard or banishment, you can quick effect change this set card to face up defense position, add an Enneacraft card from your deck to your hand, and then if this card is flipped face up, shuffle up to 3 cards from your opponent's graveyard and or banishment into the deck there. So again, very similar type of effect, but it has a little bit of a difference there, right? So again, it can search for an Enneacraft card for that top effect, quick effect, but it has a different trigger condition. This one has to see a monster activate in the graveyard or banishment, still searches for an Enneacraft card, and then once it's flipped face up, you get to shuffle up to 3 cards from your opponent's graveyard or banishment back into the deck there. So you pretty much can see the idea what the deck is. The small guys pretty much have similar effects with a little bit of a difference when it comes to their bottom effects there. And now on to the last one here, which is Enneacraft Alzonia? Yeah, I don't know. Again, same pendulum effect there. Each time a monster is flipped face up, you place a counter. Again, same thing at the bottom there. Pay 900 life points, reveal 3 Enneacraft cards, and then add 1 to your hand. Shuffle the rest back into the deck. For its monster effect, again, same top effect. Reveal this card, special monster in face down defense position. But now its bottom effect here is when your opponent activates a card or effect that includes an effect that add the card from deck to hand, you can change this set card to defense or from face up defense position, add an Enneacraft card from your deck to your hand, and then if this card is flipped face up, banish a random card from your opponent's hand until the end phase. So again, a little bit of a different effect there. So when your opponent activates a card that includes effect, that includes the effect to search from deck to hand, you get to just flip this face up and then search for an Enneacraft card. And then once it's flipped face up, you get to banish a random card from your opponent's hand. A little bit less of a ideal effect compared to the other 3, but still an okay effect there. But that is it for the level 1s. Now on to the level 9 monsters. So we'll start off with Enneacraft Mars. So its pendulum effect here, again, has the same top effect where if opponents, for each time a monster is flipped face up, you can place a counter on a card. But it's a different pendulum effect for the bottom one here. So at the end of the battle phase, if you have another Enneacraft card in the other pendulum zone, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls with attack or with a less attack than this card and then destroy it. So that's what all the level 9s have. So the level 1s have the search effect. The level 9s have the battle phase effect. So during the end of the battle phase, if you have this card in the pendulum zone and you have another Enneacraft in the other pendulum zone, you can target a monster with your opponent controls with a less attack than the card that's in the pendulum zone and destroy it. So in this case, Mar has 3,000 attack, so you can target anything with 3,000 or with 29 or less attack. It can't be exact, so 29 or less attack and destroy it, which is an okay solid effect there. And then for its monster effect here, you can reveal this card in your hand, special summon one monster from your hand in face down defense position. Again, all the pendulum monsters have that effect there. And then its bottom effect here is when your opponent activates a card or effect on the field during your turn. Quick effect, you can change this set card to face up defense position, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Then if this card is flipped face up, you can change all monsters your opponent controls to face down defense position, and monsters changed to face down defense position by this effect cannot change their battle positions forever, which is kind of insane. So Mars pretty much is kind of like a protection. So if your opponent's going to be trying to hand trap you during your turn, or if you're trying to break through a field and they respond with something, a Mar is basically an Omni Negate for your turn, as long as it's on the field, obviously, but it's an Omni Negate, which is a pretty solid effect. And obviously, once it's flipped face up as well, it gets the Book of Eclipse the entire field, and they cannot change their battle positions, which is fucking kind of crazy to think about. Very insane card there. Now on to Enneacraft Leon, which again is a level 9 monster. Its pendulum effect here is the same thing as Mars, where each time a monster is flipped face up, you place a counter on it, and then at the end of the battle phase, you can, if you have another Enneacraft card in the pendulum zone, target a monster your opponent controls with less attack than this card, and destroy it. And then again, has the same top effect here, where you can special summon a monster from your hand in defense position. And its bottom effect here is when your opponent activates a card or effect in response to an activation of one of your card effects. Quick effect, you can change this set card to face up defense position, return up to 3 cards on the field to the hand. And then after this card was flipped face up while it's in the monster zone, each time your opponent adds a card from your to their hand, inflict 900 damage to your opponent. So again, another solid card here. So basically, once your opponent responds to one of your cards, you can flip this card in response to return 3 cards on the field back to the hand, which is kind of insane because a lot of, you might not think that might be an ideal effect, but your opponent, especially if you're trying to break through a field, is going to be responding to your cards quite a lot. And another thing to really point out as well is all their bottom effects are mandatory effects. So that makes it where they're the first in the chain no matter what. Regardless on whose turns it is, they will be mandatory effects. All their bottom effects are mandatory to happen in the chain first. So even if it's your opponent's turn, yours will be a mandatory chain link 1. And if they happen to respond to it, then Leon can just flip itself face up and return 3 cards to your opponent's field, or return 3 cards back to the hand, which is kind of crazy to think about, which is very insane. And obviously, each time your opponent adds a card after this card was flipped face up to their hand, you inflict 900 damage to your opponent, which is also just insane to think about because searching in Yu-Gi-Oh! Happens all the time as well, especially in today's current meta. So that is it for Leon. Now on to Enneacraft Tail, which is a level 9 pendulum monster. Again, has the same pendulum effect as the other 2 level 9s, where you can, place a counter on this card, and then at the end of the battle phase, pop a card that has less attack than this card. And then it has the same monster effect where you can reveal it, special monster, and face down defense position. And then its bottom effect here is when your opponent activates a card or effect that would destroy a card on field. Quick effect, you can change this set card to face up defense position. And then monsters and Enneacraft spells you control cannot be destroyed by card effects for the rest of the turn. After this card is flipped face up while it's in the monster zone, each time a monster is sent to your opponent's graveyard, you also inflict 900 damage. So this is kind of the protection kind of guy. So if your opponent tries to destroy your field in any way, shape, or form, you just flip this guy up and make everything invulnerable, which is kind of insane. And then once it's flipped face up, each time your opponent sends a monster from deck or just sends it to graveyard, you inflict 900 damage. Again, that also happens all the time in Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. So you can kind of see what the point of the deck is trying to do now. And now on to the last monster here, which is Enneacraft Pixia, which again has the same pendulum effect as the other 3 level 9s, where, plays a counter and then has the battle phase effect. And then has the same monster effect. We can reveal it in the special monster in face down defense position. And then its bottom effect here is when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a card you control. Quick effect, you can change this set card to face up defense position, negate the effect. Then you can banish 1 card from your opponent's hand face down. And then after this card was flipped face up while it's in the monster zone, your opponent cannot target cards in the field or graveyard with card effect. So another just solid card here. If your opponent attempts to target anything on your field, you can just change the defense position, or change this card to face up defense position, negate that effect, banish a card out of your opponent's hand, which is very insane to think about as well. And then once it's flipped face up, your opponent can just no longer target your field or graveyard with card effects. Not even your field. They can't target their field or their graveyard with card effects as well, which is kind of insane. It applies for both fields, which is insane to think about there. So that is it for the monsters. Now on to the spell cards. We'll start off with the field spell here. Enneapolis, the Sanquisition City. Yeah, I'm probably mispronouncing that. Sorry. But this card is always treated as an Enneacraft card, and then once per turn, during the end phase, you can remove all Sanquisition counters from the field, and if you do, inflict 900 damage to your opponent for each one you remove. And then you can only use each of the following effects of Enneapolis once per turn. If you can target any number of Enneacraft pendulum monsters you control, return them to the hand, and if an Enneacraft pendulum monster you control is flipped face up during the main phase, you can return it to the hand or place it into the pendulum zone. But you can only do one of them. So again, this is pretty much the point of the deck. This is how the deck is trying to operate. So the idea is during your opponent's turn, you're trying to flip up as many monsters on your opponent's turn as possible to put counters onto the pendulum monsters that are in the pendulum skills. And then during the end phase, you remove all the counters and then inflict 900 damage to your opponent for each counter that is removed. Now, if you get to, I think it's 9 counters total. If you remove 9 counters, that is 8,100 damage. That will kill your opponent. So that's kind of the idea with the deck, is you kind of use the pendulum monsters flip effects as kind of like a control deck to interrupt your opponent. But since they do flip themselves up, you put counters onto pendulum scales, and then during the end phase, as long as you got 9 counters, you inflict 900 damage for each counter removed. Since you remove 9 counters, that would kill your opponent. So that's kind of the idea with the deck as well. But it also has a good bottom effect where you can just target any Enneacraft pendulum monsters you control, return them to hand. That matters because the very important thing about the monster effects here is the monster effects are not once per turns. Yeah, kind of crazy. All the pendulum monsters monster effects are not once per turns in any way, shape, or form. The only once per turns that they have on them are their pendulum effects that, the level 1's 900 to add a Enneacraft card. That's a once per turn. And then the Leon, or the level 9 effect to pop a card during the battle at the end of the battle phase. Technically isn't a once per turn, but again, at the end of the battle phase, kind of weird little rulings there where it's pretty much a once per turn, so that's never really going to happen. But their monster effects are not once per turn, so if you have multiple copies, you can do multiple of them in the same turn, which is kind of crazy. So that's kind of the idea with the decks. You're trying to flip them face up as many times as you control, as a control deck to interrupt your opponent, but then get counters, and then during the end phase, you just burn your opponent out of the game. So that's kind of the idea with the deck. Now on to the normal spell cards. We'll start off with Enneacraft Rebirth. This card is you can shuffle any number of Enneacraft monster cards from your hand and or face-up field into the deck, then draw cards equal to the number of shuffles. So pretty much kind of like a reload type of effect, but you can also use Enneacraft cards on the field, or monster cards on the field as well. So if they're in the pendulum scales, you can just shuffle them back, or if they're just on the field face up, you can shuffle them back and then draw cards, which is kind of insane. And then its bottom effect here is your opponent normals or special summons a monster while this card's in your graveyard, except during the damage step. You can banish this card and activate one of these effects. You can special summon one Enneacraft monster from your hand in face down defense position, or you can change one face up defense position monster, or one face up to change one face-down defense position Enneacraft monster to face-up defense position. Sorry. And you can only activate one Enneacraft Rebirth per turn. So again, kind of just like a reload type of effect, which is kind of insane. But the bottom effect is where shit gets real, because it can either special summon an Enneacraft monster from your hand in face-down defense position, which could happen a lot because, remember, the level 1s can search during your opponent's turn or just whenever they interact, right? Or you can change a face-down defense position monster, or Enneacraft monster, to face-up defense position to try to trigger like the Mars bottom effect, which is insane to think about as well. So Rebirth, really, really solid card. And then Enneacraft Release. You can place one Enneacraft pendulum monster from your deck into the pendulum zone. And then if this card is in the graveyard, except the turn it was sent to the graveyard, banish it, add one face-up Enneacraft monster from your extra deck to your hand, and you can only activate one Enneacraft Release per turn. So another just like consistency card. You just get to place any Enneacraft pendulum monster from your deck into the pendulum zones. So if you place like the level 1s, you can start searching straight away, which is kind of insane. And then the bottom effect, if any Enneacraft monsters end up going to the extra monster or the extra deck, you can banish this card to add that back to your hand. So a very, very solid card there as well. But that is going to be it for the card analysis portion of the video. Now let's get into the deck profile, shall we? Alrighty, now on to the deck profile of Enneacraft. So, there's a little bit to explain with this deck. So the first thing I will explain first is that usually in these in-depth deck or in-depth guides, I try to talk about like multiple things you can kind of splash with the archetype. We talk about like multiple deck lists and stuff like that. The thing with Enneacraft is there is no really other way to splash other cards into the archetype or any like other archetypes into its archetype, just because it's special summon effect here, the one where you can reveal this card and the special summon monster from your hand in defense position, locks you into only special summoning into face down defense position the entire turn. So it makes it really hard to try to splash something into the archetype, since the archetype has a restriction to it that makes it kind of impossible to try to splash into, because summoning in face down position in face down defense position kind of is hard to kind of play around. So even though I do like to talk about other like deck lists in these type of videos, today we're only going to be talking about this deck list because I really don't think Enneacraft doesn't need to be splashed with anything. I think Enneacraft pure is the way to go to play this archetype, and I think it's really the only way to play Enneacraft currently right now, unless there's some crazy flip deck that comes out in the future. But as of right now, this is probably the best way to play Enneacraft. As you can see with the deck profile, I'm kind of just playing 3 of every name. I'm playing three of every level 1, just because, again, they have that pendulum effect where you can reveal 3 Enneacraft cards from your deck. Your opponent adds 1 to your hand, and then you shuffle the rest back into the deck. That's just like a really good consistency starter for your turn 1. So I'm just playing 3 of every single one of those. You can maybe argue you can put Azadia or Elzonia down to like 2 or something like that, because it's one of those things, since we are playing a shit ton of the archetypal cards, you're playing a lot of consistency anyway, so you can argue like cutting down the Azadia down to 2 or something like that. But again, I like to play this at 3 just to guarantee I have a way to search turn 1. And then I'm playing 3 Mar, 3 Tail, 2 Leon, and then 2 Pixia. You could even argue like cutting down Tail to 2 if you want to. Again, I've seen a lot of lists even put Leon to 1. I think Leon's a crazy card, but I understand why they would want to put it down to 1, but I think 2, hell, I've even thought about just playing 3 of this card. I really think Leon's a really underrated card for this archetype. So I'm playing those ratios. Again, that's kind of the difference between these Enneacraft deck profiles that you might see on different videos, is just the ratios. Like, everyone's going to be playing pure this archetype. There might be some different ratios here or there, but pretty much it's all just going to be pure in general. For the spells, I'm playing 3 field spell. You have to play 3. This is kind of your way to try to win the game, because the one thing about this archetype, since it's summoning in face-down defense position, and it locks you for the entire turn to summoning in face-down defense position, it's really hard to try to kill your opponent. So the field spell is kind of the way you try to kill your opponent, is by inflicting 900 damage for each counter removed. So it's a very important card that you need for the archetype you need to have in your hand. So that's why I'm playing 3 of it. I'm playing 3 Rebirth as well, because I like Rebirth, not necessarily for its shuffle back effect, for its reload effect, but for its graveyard effect, the one where you can either choose to special summon an Enneacraft monster from your hand, or to flip a face down Enneacraft monster on your field. I think that card, that graveyard effect is kind of crazy, so I like to try to get this in rotation as much as possible. The reload effect, again, isn't necessarily the greatest to me, but I do like the graveyard effect, and so that's the reason why I'm playing 3 of it. So I just use the reload effect just so I can get it into graveyard, because I do think the graveyard effect is kind of crazy. It's also one of those things, the graveyard effect is not a once per turn either, because it says you can only activate 1 Enneacraft Rebirth. That's just for the reload effect. Its graveyard effect is not a once per turn, which is just crazy, because it doesn't activate in the graveyard. But like, where you can only activate 1 Enneacraft Rebirth per turn, doesn't activate in the it doesn't activate in the graveyard by technicality. Weird rulings with that, but since it doesn't technically activate in the graveyard, it just uses its effect in the graveyard. Its graveyard effect is not a once per turn. So if you can get multiple rebirths into the graveyard, that's kind of crazy to me. So that's the reason why I'm just loading up on the rebirths. And then I'm playing 3 Release, another card you can maybe argue cutting down a little bit to like 2 or something like that, just because, again, there's so much consistency in the deck. You don't necessarily need to play 3 Release. But again, I just like to have as much consistency as possible, try not to brick, so I'd like to play Release, especially since Release can either get to the level 1s or the level 9, so that's like really, really good, because there are some like niche scenarios where you want to put the level 9s into the Pendulum Zone, so you can go like Field Spell, add them back to hands, which is kind of crazy to think. So I am playing 3 of this still, even though you don't necessarily need to play 3 of this. But as you can see, a lot of engine in the deck. There's not that many non-engine. I only have 9. Like, by technicality, if you make a couple little cuts here and there, you can maybe squeeze it to like 12 if you want to. But in my humble opinion, since you have cards like Mar in the archetype and Leon in the archetype, it makes it where the deck can kind of board break by itself anyway. So you don't necessarily need to load up on non-engine as much non-engine compared to other decks. Like with something like Pure Yummy, it's one of those things you want to load up to like 18 hand traps in Pure Yummy, because the Yummy portion of the deck doesn't necessarily board break as well. But with Enneacraft, since it does have cards like Mar, Leon, and stuff like that, it does kind of help you try to break a field. And even like the level 1s, like Orgia pops a monster your opponent controls. What is it called? Tremea can, what is it called? Negate a monster your opponent controls as well. Like, these can, like, board break pretty well as well. And so that's the reason why I'm a little bit on less non-engine than I am on, like, a shit ton of non-engine compared to other decks. Now, again, like I said, you can probably squeeze 12 non-engine if you really want to, but I think 9 is kind of really, really good. Now, the non-engine I'm going with is Ash, just because Ash stops the Charmies, which, you know, I think Pirellia is the problem. Like, Fool will never be a problem for this deck. So you can even argue for maybe even like siding Ash, because people aren't really going to be main decking Pirellia right now. So you can even argue just side Ash for once, you know, game 2s and game 3s happens, and you know the Pirellias are going to come in. Then you side in the Ash for that. So this could be a different non-engine if you want to, but I'm just playing Ash because it's a generic hand trap. Sol and Luna. My God, is this card crazy for this archetype. It's absolutely ridiculous how good this card is for this archetype. So, if you don't know what Sol and Luna does, you can target one monster you control and one monster your opponent controls. Apply the following effects depending on the battle position. So, if they're face up, you change it to face down defense position. If it's face down, you change it to face up defense position. So, pretty much it's kind of a Book of Moon for the archetype. So, basically targeting, if you target one of your opponent's monsters, will always be face up. You just Book of Moon their monsters, and then depending on what you target, you can either flip it face up or face down. Now, depending on the scenario, both effects are really, really good, because let's say you target like a face down Mar, right, during your opponent's turn, you Book of Moon one of your monsters, you flip this face up, now Mar will trigger to Book of Moon the rest of your opponent's field, which is kind of insane. Or the other way around, you can go like Sol and Luna, target Leon that's face up, put it back in face down defense position, and then Leon has its effect once again live, because the dumb thing about this archetype is none of this shit is a fucking once per turn. Yeah, I don't know why the fuck they did that. The only once per turn in the archetype is the level 1's search ability, that pay a 900 life points and then search for an Enneacraft card. Those are the only ones that are once per turn. Everything else in the archetype is not a once per turn, except, like, obviously I'm not counting the spells, because the spells are once per turns, but within the monsters themselves, everything else for the monsters are not once per turn. So if you can get multiple Leons in the field, you can trigger multiple Leons. If you get multiple Mars, you can trigger multiple Mars. If you have multiple Orgias, you can trigger multiple more Orgias. It's kind of crazy that they just did not put a once per turn restriction to this archetype. Kind of insane to think about. So that is one, like, upside with the deck, is that there isn't a once per turn. So it's cards like Sol and Luna being able to set cards back face down is really, really good. So I think Sol and Luna is a mandatory 3-0 for this archetype. Like, 100%, no matter what, you have to be playing this card if you're going to be playing Enneacraft. And then Book of Eclipse, a little bit of a weirder side, because, again, it's kind of the same idea as Sol and Luna. Like, once your monsters are face up, you can just go Book of Eclipse, flip them all back to face down defense position, and then just, you know, they have their effect live once again, which is kind of insane to think about. It's also just like a nice board breaker by technicality against like K9 or Yummy. Like, being able to book everything face down is kind of cool for that. So I do like the idea of a Book of Eclipse in this archetype. So those are kind of like cards I think you should be playing in the archetype. Ash, again, could be another like non-engine if you want it to be a different non-engine, which is fine. Again, I'm just playing Ash because Ash is like the most generic hand trap in the game. But then again, you can squeeze this to 12 non-engine if you want to. I'm just, you know, 9 is still perfectly fine because I think the archetype can board break pretty well. So that is it for the main deck there. Extra deck does not matter. Does not matter a slightly bit. You will never go into your extra deck like ever in this deck. So if you want to play like an SP and a Sky Crisis and that's it, that's probably fine. That's still fine with me. But again, Extra deck is really never going to come up. So you can play like Super Poly if you want to for like Arua and Mud Dragon. You can play like an Ultimate Slayer if you want to play like Natis, Malong, or Aggregator, or even like the Tri-Brigade Link 5 for fucking, what did I just said? Ultimate Slayer, sorry. So if you want to like put your extra deck for that kind of thing, you could. But again, the extra deck does not matter in the slightest. So like this can be whatever the hell you want it to be. So that is it for the deck. Now let's get into like some things I did see when I was testing the deck that you could be playing. Now we'll start off with the counters to the deck. Droplet. My God, does Droplet just kind of fuck everything over in this archetype. Droplet is a kind of insane card, especially against certain little things. Droplet is really, really good because they have to flip face up first before they end up doing their effect, right? So because they flip up for cost, meaning Droplet can negate that effect, then negate the bottom effect of their flip. So let's say you go like Mar to attempt to negate something, and they go Chain Droplet, negate Mar, and then they'll negate the bottom effect as Mar as well, since Droplet negates the entire effect. So I think Droplet is one of those cards you have to be scared of in this archetype. Pirellia, I also mentioned as well, Mochomi Pirellia, another card you do have to worry about because this deck summons from hand all the time. Fua is never really a problem for this archetype. Well, never will be a problem for this archetype. Meowls will never be a problem for this archetype, but Pirellia is a massive ass problem. So that's another counter you have to worry about. Droll and Lockbird, also something to think about. It's not necessarily like the greatest, but it still could hurt depending on the hand, right? Like you can still do plays under Droll and Lockbird, which is kind of weird because if you think about any Pendulum archetype, usually they die to Droll. And there is an exception to that in Enneacraft. You still can play around Droll to a certain extent, and Droll will still hurt somewhat, but Droll isn't that much of a problem. You can still do a lot of plays under Droll and Lockbird if you want to. But those are kind of like the three main scares. Something like Evenly Match come into play as well because since Mar is only an Omni-Negate during your turn and not during your opponent's turn, there isn't a protection against Evenly Match because Tail can stop destruction, so he can stop like things like Regeki or Regeki and Dark Hole, and then Pixia can protect against targeting effects, which is cool. But there's nothing to protect against something like Evenly Match that forces you to banish your cards. So Evenly Match is another kind of thing you do have to worry about, and that's the reason why I do have a problem with something like Mar in the archetype because Mar isn't a true Omni Negate. It's only an Omni Negate during your turn, which is very, very unfortunate. I wish it was just like a straight up Omni. Maybe it would probably be a little bit broken if it did, but if it was a straight up Omni, it would solve a lot of problems. But since it's only a negate during your turn, it doesn't solve the Evenly Matched kind of problem. So that's another huge card you do have to worry about is Evenly Matched. But that is it for the counters. Now let's talk about other cards you can be playing. So in the side deck, you can be playing Sphere Mode and Lava Golem because this deck never normal summons like ever. So you don't have to worry about retaining your normal summon for anything. So Sphere and Lava Golem is just a nice board breaker type of thing. Obviously, this is only once you know you're going second, but still really, really good. So this would probably be in a lot of side decks when it comes to Enneacraft. But since you don't use your normal summon that much, you can actually use other cards in the archetype as well for going first. So you can play Vanity's Fiend, just like nope, you're done. You're not going to special summon any monsters against me. You're just going to get Vanity Fiend, and you're just going to lose the game. You know, you could do that if you want to. Again, it's only a 1 tribute, and these cards special summon themselves from the hand like all the time, so this is fine. And they only restrict you from special summoning, so normal summoning is still fine. So Vanity Fiends, like things like that just prevent your opponent from playing, is something you could do. Gap the Divine Soldier. I heard there's like an FTK with this card, but I don't necessarily see it, but like cards like this, like that can help you like somewhat FTK is kind of cool because this makes it where you change all battle positions to face up attack position. That counts as a flip for the field spell or for the pendulum monsters. So they get counters onto themselves for that. And then obviously the field spell can burn as well. So that if you can just, get some FTK off, you could if you want to. Zaborg, I've seen this like running around a lot recently where you just use Zaborg, the Mega Monarch, as your normal summon, target itself, destroy itself, and then you load up your extra deck with cards that trigger in the graveyard. So like things like Granganoil and things like Arua, like things like that have like graveyard effects. you just kind of load up your extra deck with that. You send it to the graveyard so you have another way to keep playing after that. I've seen a lot of people be using Zaborgs. If you don't know what Zaborg does, you target a monster on the field, destroy it. Then if it was a light monster, both players send as many cards as possible from their extra deck to the graveyard, but not more than the original level or rank of the destroyed monster. So this card is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they have to send monsters with level 8, any level 8 or lower level monsters from their extra deck to the graveyard. So not only can you play with your extra deck with that, but it also can be clearing out, depending on the matchup, could be insane against like someone like Yummy. Clearing all their synchro out of the graveyards could be very insane. So this is the kind of little tech card that don't be surprised if people are playing in the archetype. Denko Sekka kind of revolves around like the side deck with Sphere Mode and Lava Golem. If you're playing against like a deck that sets a lot, you can just normal summon this. All of a sudden, all their sets are just completely worthless since you don't normal summon in this deck. Fua, another just card. Again, these are just hand traps you could be playing. Shifter is technically a card you could be playing as well. This deck doesn't necessarily care about its graveyard as much, so Shifter is just Shifter. If you want to play in the main deck, it's fine, but it kind of conflicts with I think Tails effect is what it is, where each time a monster is sent to the graveyard, you inflict 900 damage to your opponent. Obviously, Shifter makes it where they can't send it to the graveyard, so it kind of conflicts with Tail. But again, Shifter is Shifter. This is a card you could be playing in the archetype. Purge as well. Again, these are Earth and Light monsters, so Purge restriction doesn't matter to you whatsoever. So if you want to play Purge in the archetype, you can. Daruma Karma Cannon, again, just another card that can flip your opponent's all cards to face down defense position. So it can re-trigger everything, put everything back in face down defense position for their effects once again. And also your opponents gets set as well, so that's also insane. Miracle Maker is like a kind of cool little card. Reveal 2 flip monsters in your deck. Your opponent randomly picks one for you to special to their field and face down defense position, and then you add the other one. It's kind of a little more of a consistency card, so something you could do as well, because again, it only requires 2 flip monsters, and every monster in the deck is a flip monster, but I don't necessarily think it's the greatest. Same thing with the pot cards. I think the pot cards are actually not that great. Even though you don't need your extra deck, I honestly just don't think they're that good in this archetype, because you want something like Rebirth in the graveyard. So if you do the pot cards, it turns off the Rebirth reload effect, making it where it's harder to get into the graveyard. So that's the reason why I don't like the pots in the archetype, just because it does turn you off from drawing for the rest of the turn. So it makes something like Rebirth kind of dead, and you want Rebirth in the graveyards because its graveyard effect is what really matters for Rebirth. So that's the reason why I didn't like the pot cards. And then Lord of Heavenly Prison is kind of just like a protection effect. You can reveal this card in your hand, and while this card is revealed, set cards in the field cannot be destroyed by card effects, which is kind of insane. But again, it's kind of one of those things. Tail protects anyways, so it doesn't necessarily matter as much, but it's just harder to negate because obviously it's in the hand, so it's harder to negate Lord compared to Tail, where Tail can like die to like Droplet or something like that, right? So, but something you can think about in the archetype as well. So that is going to be it for the main deck. So one more thing before we get to the combos, I want to say you kind of want to treat this deck as kind of like a trap deck. That's kind of how I've kind of played with the deck, is you want to treat this as a trap deck. You want to like interact at certain times with the deck, because basically this archetype makes it where you're flipping during your opponent's turn like a trap deck. Anyways, they're just monster form, so they have a little bit more to die to, but you want to treat this as a trap deck where you're trying to control the game. You want to flip cards at the right time. You don't want to just shotgun them straight away. You want to flip it at the right time to get the most advantageous value. So that's how you want to play this deck. Play it as like if it's a trap deck, because again, it's more of a slow control deck. It's not going to combo whatsoever, especially since they lock themselves into only face down defense position anyways. It's going to be really hard for you to try to combo with the deck. So treat it as a trap deck. You're just trying to control the game and then burn your opponent out through Sanquisition City effect to remove counters and stuff like that. But without further ado, though, enough talking. Now let's get into the combo, shall we? Alrighty, now on to the combo portion of the video here. Now, one thing before we get into this is that there really isn't like a 1 to 2 card combo. Now, I am going to show you a 2 card combo, but I'm only going to show off 1, because this is one of those decks where 5 card sample hands matter way more than the 1 or 2 card combos. And there's not even necessarily that many 1 to 2 card combos. I think really this is only the 2 card combo I can really show off to you, and that's about it. It's better to show off this deck as a 5 card sample hand, because like I said with the deck profile, you have to kind of treat this deck as like a trap deck. You're very much trying to control the game. You're going to win it through a couple of turns of interrupting your opponents and stuff like that. This isn't a combo deck where you're trying to set up on as much negation as possible and just win the game automatically. This is a deck you have to take slow. You're going to control a game. You're going to go a couple turns and, you know, win the game through like the burn effect of the field spell, right? So that's how you kind of want to treat it. So with those type of decks, you kind of want to go off the 5-card sample hands a lot more because those are a lot more realistic. You want to play with all 5 cards in your hand compared to like 1 or 2 cards in your hand. Like with something like Yummy, you're fine with playing with 1 to 2 cards combos because that's necessarily just what the deck can do, and then you just load up with hand traps, right? Well, with this deck, you kind of want to play with your entire hand to kind of help you prevent your opponent from playing the game, right? So with that out of the way, this is going to be the only 2-card combo I'll show off, and then after this will be a shit ton of 5-card sample hands. I haven't decided on how many I'm going to do yet. I'm just going to go up until I think it's good enough for the video, but there's going to be a lot of 5-card sample hands in this video. So without further ado, though, let's get into the 2-card combo here. So pretty much you just need 2 level 1s. Any level 1s, as long as they're different names, 2 level 1s work. So this can be the other level 2 ones I don't have, the red and green one. But I'm starting off with the blue and yellow one. Sorry I'm saying the colors and not their names because I just like saying the colors a little bit more because I think that's better going off their art, but that's just me. But yeah, so this can be any level 1 combinations. As long as they are different names, you should be good to go. So we're going to standby main phase here. We'll go ahead and activate Tromeria here. Pay 900 for the effect to go ahead, and we'll just reveal 3. I actually go for Orgia. I think this is probably the most important one to get in rotation straight away. So if you don't have Orgia straight away, get to Orgia like straight away. So that's going to be my first search here. Obviously, if you get drolled, this combo doesn't work. But again, this is just to show you what a 2-card combo can do. So we'll get into Orgia. So if you don't have this in your starting hand, get to it straight away because I think this is the most important one to start off with. So after you get Orgia, you'll just activate it straight away. Go effect, paying 900. In this case, we'll get all the field spells. So we'll reveal 3 field spells and then add it to your hand there. And then we'll go ahead and activate field spell. Field spell effect, target Orgia and then target Tormara to add them back to hand. This is just so you can clear your pendulum scales because those the pay 900 is a hard once per turn. So we want to add them back to hand, clear our own scales here. Then we'll do Tamara's effect. Very weird thing here, and a very thing I want to make sure you guys understand. You can activate Tomera's effect or any of the guys, any of the pendulum monsters, and then just summon a different monster. That might actually be the better play for you, just so, you know, it's always going to be unknowledgeable, right? Because you'll just set, so in this case, I triggered Tomera here, and then set Orgia. They technically don't know it's Orgia. They could be like going off like, oh, well, he activated Tomera. He'll probably just summon Tomera, right? In this case, I activated Tomera's Orgia, just like a little niche way to play the deck to make your opponent, you know, unknown of all the cards, right? They really will never know what the set cards is, just because, again, these aren't hard ones per turns anyways, and they can summon different monsters, not themselves. So, very insane. That's how I think you should be playing the deck, to kind of make it where your opponent has less knowledge of what the cards you're setting, right? So, we do that, and then we'll activate Alzonia here, use the effect of paying 900 life points to go ahead and search for release. Now you can just search for the other level 9 or the other level 1 that you don't have in rotation, but I get release here because release pretty much does the same thing anyways. Then we can go release effect. Maybe if you do release, do it as your first search, just so you can kind of play around like something like Droll and Lockbird or something like that. But we get to release here, and then release will just place our last level 1 that we have not activated yet, and then we'll just activate its effect here, paying another 900 life points. In this case, we reveal 2 Leons and then a rebirth here. Now in this case, we end up hitting the rebirth. Again, we can't reveal like 3 Leon. We could reveal 3 rebirth if we want to, but we're not playing 3 Leon, so we, you know, can't reveal 3 Leon. So we hit revealed 1 rebirth and then just end up hitting it. Now if you end up getting rebirth here, now we have a different way just in case you get to Leon here, but if you end up getting to rebirth here, you will activate Rebirth, shuffling the 2 scales there back into the deck, and then just draw 2 cards here. In this case, I draw Mar and Tail, which is like probably the best 2 draws it could have been, to be honest with you. Those are very insane draws to draw off of that. And then we'll just do Tomera's effect, set a card, Tomera's effect, set a card, and then Tomera effect, set another card. So by technicality, you know where Tomera is at. Again, probably mispronouncing the name, but whatever. They probably know where this is at, but they don't know what these 3 cards are. They can assume one of them might be Orgia, but they don't know where it's at. That's kind of like the cool thing about the deck, is they don't really know what these 3 cards are. They can assume Yugioh is one of them, but they just don't know where it's at. They can only really assume Tomera is this one, and that's it. But in that case, you just pass on that in main phase here. So now you just have Interruption. Whenever your opponent activates an effect that includes effect special summon, you do Tomera's effect, flip itself face up, and then add an Enneacraft card. I like searching Leon just so you have like multiple things to do off of your rebirth here. And then Tomera's effect is a mandatory effect. Matters a lot. That does matter quite a lot, and I'll explain why in just 1 second. But Tomera mandatory Chainlink 1 to negate a monster your opponent controls, and then Sequestration City Chainlink 2 to either add it to hand or place it into the pendulum zone. So we'll just place it back into the pendulum zone, which is nice because it can chain block as well, which is kind of cool if that ends up mattering for certain effects. Then we have Tail to protect, so if they ever try to destroy something by card effect, you just flip it, negate that effect, and then your opponent can't destroy any of your cards for the rest of the turn, which is kind of insane. Or sorry, so they everything's protected for the rest of the turn, and then each time your opponent monster is sent to the graveyard, you just inflict 900 damage, which is kind of insane. So very good card there. And then you still have Yugioh. When your opponent just activates a card in hand, you just search for another Enneacraft monster, and then you have 2 counters every time. This isn't an activated effect that just happens. So when these are face up, you just get the counter straight away. And then you have Yugioh effect to either to pop a card. That's a mandatory effect, so even though I didn't activate it, it is a mandatory effect. That has to happen. And we have Field Spell to either add it to hand or place it into the pendulum zone. Really is just up to you. And then we still have Rebirth in Graveyard to either do place like Leon effect in Graveyard, which could be nice, or just flip Mar face up, and then Mar just, Book of Eclipse the entire field there, which is kind of insane. So a little bit more of just a control heavy deck that you have to kind of like manage where to interrupt correctly so you can get the most value, right? But if we end up hitting Leon, what do you end up doing off the Leon, right? So I get Leon here, and then we just do Tomera's effect, place Leon, and then Tomera effect, place itself face down, and we will pass on that. We'll go standby main phase here. So you have the scale still, so you end up getting counters a lot earlier, which is very nice to think about. So you have Yugioh's effect. So let's say they set up on a field, right? Let's say you're versing, I don't know, something, right? Let's say they have like monsters on their field, right? So let's say they go Habakiri effect in hand. You go Yugioh Chainlink 2, flipping itself face up to add an Enneacraft monster. So chain results, you go Yugioh, add back Rebirth, or just add any Enneacraft card. Doesn't have to be Rebirth, but any Enneacraft card works. And then they resolve their Habakiri, going Habakiri tribute Saji, and then attributing the Saji, right? So how that works is, since these are mandatory effects, Yugioh is a mandatory effect. It has to happen as Chainlink 1. Even though it is your opponent's turn by technicality, since it is a mandatory effect, it has to be the first one in the Chainlink, which matters a lot for Leon's effect. So if they end up doing the Saji effect, you go Yugioh Chainlink 1 to attempt to pop a monster non-targeting. That's a mandatory, so even if they don't have a monster, that still happens, right? So that's a mandatory Chainlink 1, and then they go trigger effect Saji Chainlink 2 to search. Leon can chain to that because that technically Saji is chaining to Yugioh's effect in the chain, right? Because Yugioh is chain 1, Saji is chain 2. Even though Saji is doing nothing to Yugioh, it's still by technicality responding to it. Leon will then go Chainlink 3, flip itself face up, and then return 3 cards on the field to the graveyard. That is a very important thing to note with Leon with Enneacraft, is that Yugioh, not just Yugioh, any of the Enneacraft monsters are mandatory. Their bottom effects are mandatory effects, so they have to happen in Chainlink 1. So if your opponent activates something in response as like an on-summon effect or something like that, right? Leon still counts to respond. Since it is responding to your mandatory effect, Leon can still flip up to chain and then return 3 cards, which is insane to think about. So something to think about in the Enneacraft stuff is these cards are mandatory, so that's why Leon, I think, is actually a lot better than people are giving it credit for. Since these cards are mandatory, they have to be Chainlink 1, so it makes it a lot more likely that Leon it gets responded to, so Leon's effect is live there. So that's just a ruling I wanted to point out there. So yeah, that is going to be it for the 2-card combo there. Now let's get into the 5-card sample hands. Alrighty, now on to the 5-card sample hands here. Again, I don't know how many I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep doing it until I feel like it's good enough for the video here. So we're just going to give the deck a quick little shuffle here, and then we'll draw ourselves the 5 cards here. 3, 4, 5. Draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's a hand. I like this hand. Okay, so actually what I like to do with Yugioh, So go standby main phase is just to like, since you never need your normal summon in this deck, it's just go, okay, I'll just set this. Why is that cool? Is because whenever they hand trap you now it's just like, okay, I'll just chain Orgia to it to get another search, right? So it kind of effectively lets you play around Droll and Lockbird as well, because let's say I go Tamara's effect, right? I go Tamara, effect to search for something. They go, okay, new chain, or in a new chain, Droll effect, you'll chain Orgia, search first, then that's just insane, right? That just sounds insane because it searches for any Enneacraft card as well. So if you end up not having the field spell, you can just get to the field spell. In this hand, it doesn't really matter. But so that's something to note with Orgia. If you already have like a way to play with something like Tamara, you can just set Orgia and then play. So if they ever try to hand trap you, you just flip up Orgia, get another search, which is kind of insane. So that's what I like to do with Orgia, is just set it, since you're never going to need a normal summon anyways. So now you're kind of protected from hand traps. If they hand trap you, you can just get another search, right? Which is kind of nice. But in this case, we'll go Tamara effect, resolve. I guess we'll just get release is fine. Yeah, we'll just reveal 3 release, and then reveal the 3 and get the release. Let's say they do Droll and Lockbird us here, right? Just so again, theoretically, let's say, okay, new chain, Droll and Lockbird. In that case, since they activated something in hand, we'll chain Orgia to it to search. Here, we'll end up searching. We get one more search. I think getting with our current hand right now, Rebirth doesn't do anything. So I think we already have Leon. I want to get Mar, but the reason why Mar isn't great because it's only during our turn, which is kind of unfortunate. And this is something like the note with Mar as well. Since it's not an Omni Negate on the field, you can't stop things like hand traps, like Droll and stuff like that. You can only stop cards that activate on the field. So, like, kind of a little thing there is, even though I think Mar is kind of crazy, it's only a negate for your turn, and it's only for negates on the field. So you can't even stop, like, hand traps or something like that. So what would if we get Drolled, what would I search? We don't search Rebirth, obviously, because it doesn't do anything. We can just search for... We're going to get Tamara back, so that's fine. We can just get Alzonia. Alzonia's not bad either. I mean, we can just get that. It's fine. Bounce. Sorry, I'm just like thinking of how to do the combo here real quick. We get that. Mar is like okay, but we don't have a way to put Rebirth in the grave. I think we just get Scorpion. I think the tail is fine. And then Droll obviously resolves. This is a mandatory effect as its bottom effect, but obviously there's nothing to destroy because we're going first, right? And then we'll activate the Sinquiston City. We'll activate Release to play. So in this case, we don't have to place anything else. Like, depending on the matchup, if you're versing like Malice or something like that, you can place Okinera because its effect actually does matter in that matchup. Or even like Alzonia is not bad if you verse like a deck that searches a lot. I want to get Mar, but again, there's really not a way to trigger Mar just yet because we don't have Rebirth engraved and our hand's not necessarily a way to play through it. So we can just get Pixia, which is fine. Or we can just get a second Leon. I like a second Leon, which is probably fine. Yeah, we'll just get a second Leon. I think Leon, again, even though I've seen lists like cut it down to 1, I think Leon's just a crazy card. I think it's actually one of the best cards in the archetype, in my opinion. But then we would just go to Sinquiston City, add all these motherfuckers back to hand. There we go. Because it can target any number. So we'll just add all back to hand here. Under Droll. Again, we're under Droll. Just to keep that in mind. Now we'll just go, let's say, Orgia effect. We'll set this. Orgia effect. Set this. Orgia effect. Set this. Orgia effect. Set this. And then Orgia effect. Set this. Right? Like, you can just trigger Orgia as many times because it's not a once per turn, right? And in that case, we'll just pass with that. Like, even under Droll, we still have like a lot of interruptions here, which is kind of crazy. We have a target protection off a tail as well, which is kind of nice to think about. So this is kind of still like a nice field. Now, obviously, again, treat this as a trap deck. So you kind of have to interrupt at a certain point that is correct to get the most value. Because if you shotgun these things, it's not going to get as much value, and once you go through all your interruptions, you're fucked because you have no other way to keep interrupting, and your opponent has a way to play, you just lose the game, right? So that is something just to think about with this. So again, Leon is crazy because these guys are mandatory effects, the Tamara, Orgia, and even Tail's effect here, or not Tail doesn't matter, ignore me on the Tail, but the Orgia and Tamara's effect are mandatory, so Leon could be like get a lot of value off of this as well. And maybe we should have gotten a Pixia since we already had Leon, but I just wanted to get a lot of value there. So we can go, let's say, whenever they activate a card in hand, you just flip this, chain to it. Search for Rebirth is fine. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter what you search off of this. And then you can go mandatory chain link 1 if they have a way to respond. You have this guy to flip face up. Oh, sorry, don't do that. Don't do that yet. Oh, don't do that yet. Don't do yet. We can chain Leon effect to bounce 3 cards if they respond to Orgia's effect, and then Leon obviously makes it where if your opponent adds a card from deck or to the hand, you just inflict 900 damage, which is kind of crazy to think about, which is insane. So you popped a card, you bounce 3 cards. Again, this is all very much depending on how your opponent plays. That's kind of the weird thing about this in-depth guide is it really matters on how your opponent plays the game, because these can only really respond to how your opponent plays. But that's just something to think about. We still have Tamara to like interrupt. We still have like another Leon if they end up like responding or something like that. And we still have like Tail to protect as well. So like not necessarily the greatest, but it still works out, right? You just have to time your interruptions correctly so you can get the most value out of stuff. So that's how you kind of have to play the deck. And obviously the field spell can start placing guys in the pendulum zones and then like getting counters on them as well. We just didn't draw any non-engine, and drawing 2 field spell kind of sucks there. But that's it for that 5-card sample hand. Now let's get into the next 5-card sample hand. Alrighty, now on to the next 5-card sample hand here. So we'll just shuffle up the deck a little bit here, and then we'll draw ourselves the 5 cards here. Draw 1, draw 2, draw 3, draw 4, draw 5. Okay, that's not a bad hand, not gonna lie. So, again, like I like to do, I like to just set this card straight away so we have a play around like draw and stuff like that. Then we can go like effect of Yugioh. Then shuffle your hand. Always, if you're on DB, shuffle your hand before you end up setting. And I can set Mars. So now it's just like they don't know what this card is, because it doesn't have to be the Yugioh. So now we have the Mars as a negate. So just in case like they activate something that activates on field. So like I don't know, Azuna is probably the best like thing. Like obviously this can't stop hand traps, but like against like Azuna or something like that, this is like a nice negation for that. So now you can just kind of play your turn, right? So we can go activate Tamara. Not set. The fuck, activate. Activate the effect or resolve. We already have like so much here. I think we just get like, we already have field spell. What the fuck? I think we get release. Release is fine. Release, and no release. Where's release? There he is. Release is fine. Get release, and then we'll go activate release. We'll place the yellow one. Obviously, if you get drawn, you play it a little bit differently. But since we don't, let's just say we're not playing 3 hand traps with this one. We'll place the Alzonia effect, resolve. We'll get rebirth. I like rebirth a lot, actually. So I'm going to get rebirth, and rebirth. Rebirth. There we go. Cool. All right. So now we have rebirth. We'll activate this, because this can shuffle from hand as well. So this is fine. We can go effect, bounce these guys back to hand. And then we can go activate Yugioh effects. I don't know why I'm going in deck. We have to resolve effect there. Last one we haven't got is green, so we'll go for the green one. Where's the other greens? Green and green. Sorry, I'm going off the colors. I'm not really saying their name. I'm sorry, but that's just how my brain remembers stuff. So we'll get green, then activate green. Obviously, I should be playing life points. I don't know why I haven't done that. So this will be 3,600 with this effect of Orc. And then what do we search off of this? I think Leon, since we don't have Leon. But there's a chance we miss. So I think we'll just get Tail. It's fine. Leon, Tail. Let's hope to God we hit Leon. We got the Leon. That's why I want to play 3 Leon, because I think Leon is kind of crazy. Even though I understand there's a chance your opponent just never responds to anything, so he doesn't get the value. I really do like Leon, like quite a lot. But in that case, we shuffle up here. We'll just do effect of Alzonia. Set a random card. Again, this could be whatever. It doesn't have to summon itself, which is kind of crazy. So now we just still have a lot here. Then we can go activate rebirth, shuffle 1. I like Yugioh, but not in the pendulum scale. 2. I'm fine with keeping these guys in hand because they are still just interruptions for us as well. Like I think just 2 is probably fine. We'll just shuffle, and just hope to God we draw into like something like Sol and Luna. Well, there's Sol and Luna. Cool. Crazy. Now that's just insane. Now our end field is kind of crazy now. So now we can go shuffle up here. Okanera effect. Set this. Okanera effect. Set this. And then we'll place Okanera in the scale so we can start getting counters for the field spell. And we'll set Sol and Luna and pass on that. That was a crazy one, right? Obviously, it doesn't look too crazy, but this is like a lot of stuff here, especially since Sol and Luna is just a dumb card that's just really insane for this archetype. So, what do you have? So, obviously, Mar isn't the greatest because it only is a negate during your turn, but as long as you can flip it face up to be a Book of Eclipse, it's still insane. We have two ways, technically. We have the Rebirthing Graveyard and Sol and Luna to flip it face up. So, we have multiple ways to flip Mar face up, which is kind of crazy. So, how would I want to play this? My God. Again, it really just depends on how your opponent plays. But, like, being able to go Orgia, if they ever activate a card in hand, searching for... Again, it doesn't necessarily matter what you search. Just getting, like, follow-up off of this is fine. So, I guess just... Mar, I guess, is fine, I guess. Well, why not? We'll do Mar. And then going mandatory Chainlink 1. If they ever respond to it, you have a Leon to, like, you know, bounce 3 cards, which is insane. But you can also place this in this... I actually want to place this one. Don't place this one, because I actually want to do something with this. So we get a counter off of this, and then obviously if they activate a card that includes effect to special summon, you can flip this up. Search for another Enneacraft card. It's just Scorpion is fine. And then... Tomera effect to negate a card. We can even go Chainlink 2 Sequisition City to move it back to the pendulum scale. So that you have 2 counters on this guy. And then if they search, you go this guy effect. If they activate a card effect that searches, search for Pixia. Then effect to banish a card until the end phase. And that gets a counter on this guy and this guy, which is kind of crazy. And then you can go Sol and Luna, targeting Orgia, again, depending on what the matchup is. It doesn't have to be Orgia if you want to, but we can target Orgia and then one of their face downs, set it, or one of their face ups, and you set both of them. Now you have Orgia once again to flip if they activate another card in hand, which is crazy to think about. In this case, I don't know what to search. Pretty much have everything. That's the problem. I guess we just get another Rebirth. That's fine. That places counters, and then you still have Rebirth affecting Graveyard, banishing itself to flip up Mar, and then that gets a counter on this, and then Mar effect will attempt to Book of Eclipse and everything. If they respond to it, you chain Leon, putting more counters on these guys, and then you flip up, and now they're forced to pretty much kill off the counters or the field spell, because if they pass on this end phase, you just remove all the counters, which is 10 of them, and then inflict 900 damage. That's 9,000 damage you're doing with this counters, and you just instantly win the game there. Now, obviously, they're probably going to remove it somehow, so you kind of have to play the longer game, but since the smaller guys searched a shit ton of shit, you have a shit ton of follow-up to go with it as well. So very, very, like, again, it's a trap deck. You kind of have to play it where you get the most interruption out of stuff. Again, it's kind of hard since I'm not versing anyone to kind of show what the deck value can be. But again, treat this as a trap deck. You want to interrupt at the correct time to get the most value out of stuff. So that's it for that 5-card sample hand. Now let's get into the next one. Alrighty, now on our third 5-card sample hand here. So we'll give the deck, again, just a little bit of a shuffle before we draw our cards here. And draw 5, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, fucking insane hand. We got 3 level 1s to start off here as well. Man, Orgia is just stuck to our hand. So again, if you draw Orgia and you have more ways to play, obviously, if you have Orgia, but you need Orgia in the scale to play, you obviously don't do this play. But since we, our hand's kind of crazy, we can just set Orgia, and then now this is just like something they have to worry about, right? And we can even like bluff them a little bit, so we can even go Effect of Okinera, shuffle up our hand, and then set a card. So now they're like, oh, that could be Mar, that could be a problem, right? That's like something they have to worry about, right? Even though it's not Mar, still something you have to worry about, right? So now we can go activate the scales, right? Activate, resolve effect, get ourselves, release is fine. Yeah, release is fine. We'll get release, release, and release. Because if they end up drawing us, we can just chain the Orgia to add the field spell. So we don't need to search for field spell straight away. Then activate release, release effect to... I'm going to place Orgia. This might be a little bit weird, but since we already have it. But I want to place Orgia. So we already paid 9. And then pay effect once again, another 900. And we'll resolve the effect this time. This time we will search for the field spell. To where's the third one? There he is. 3 Inquisition Cities, and then obviously we'll get 1 to hand. Activate it, bounce back our Tomera and our Orgia, and then we can go Effect of Okinera again, set the Orgia, then activate Okinera, Okinera effect. Again, we should be paying 900 here. I don't know why. I keep forgetting to pay 900. They do pay 900 for their effects. Do remember that. I kind of forget to do that sometimes, especially with a newer deck. But now we'll go get the last level 1 we haven't activated yet, which is Elzonia. And then activate Elzonia. Pay another 900. Ooh, not 900 there. and then resolve the effect one more time. In this case, I think we get Mar is fine. Yeah, Mar is fine. Because Mar is like always the best one to get, especially with Rebirth in Graveyard, which we're about to get in the Graveyard right now. 3, get itself to hand here, and then we'll go Tamara effect, set its that, and then activate Rebirth, shuffle back Alzonia and Okanera. Shuffle, 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 draw 2. That's kind of unfortunate. That's unfortunate. It's still fine. We can just activate this guy because you can only use the effect, but we can still activate it as many times as we need to, and then just do effect of Tamara, setting itself to the field since we already have normal summoned as well. There's no point. Man, drawing another field spell kind of sucked, but it's still fine. Again, pretty much, as you can see, what the deck is trying to do is you're trying to set up like a field that can interrupt a lot with something in the pendulum cells, so you can at least put counters on stuff. So it makes it where if they can't remove your counters, you pretty much win the game, right? So that's kind of the way to play this deck. Again, feels like a trap deck in certain scenarios. But again, I got multiple Orgias because Orgia is not a once per turn, or well, none of the pendulum monsters are once per turn. So having multiple of these guys still end up working. Obviously, it matters on the matchup. If you verse like a Malice matchup, obviously getting Okanera onto the field is probably better. But this is like the most generic, like turn 1 feels like Orgia and Tamara being on field is probably the best way to play, right? Like maybe even multiple Tamara might have been the correct play, right? But this still ends up working for us. So again, this is still a lot. You still have Tamara whenever they activate effect that attempts to special summon to flip itself up and then search for a guy. And then, unfortunately, Pixia is probably like the worst. It protects from targeting, so it's still not bad. So if they ever target something, you just flip this, and then after this card is flipped in the monster zone, your opponent cannot target cards on the field and graveyard with card effects. It's kind of insane. Again, depending on the matchup, that could matter quite a lot. This also negates a monster. This, again, whenever they activate a card effect in hand, flip, search for an Enneacraft card, just search for Mar is fine. And then pop a monster, and then since you have 2 of them, you can do multiple effects. We'll just search for Alzonia is fine. And then obviously you can place one of these into the pendulum scales as well. So you can have like another guy with scales, which is fine. So let's say we did this on the first one, right? So in this case, we flipped 4 with this guy on field. And then if we flip, this is the first one we flipped up. So it should have been in the scale. So this should have 3. That's already 7. If you can get one more scale, which is just Mar with Rebirth effect, banish, flip up Mar, and then just fucking Book of Eclipse everything. You get 2 more counters, and all of a sudden now they have to clear your field, or you win the game in the end phase with Sequestration City, which is kind of insane. So again, more of a trap deck. You got to interrupt at the correct places, but very insane. You can see what the deck's trying to do is set up as much interruption as possible with the pendulum monsters, and then just control the game from there. So that's it for that 5-card sample hand. Now onto the 4th one. Alrighty, now on to the 4th 5-card sample hand here. So we're just going to give a deck just a little bit of a shuffle here, and we'll draw ourselves the 5 cards here. 2, 3, 4. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Damn. Okay. We would have loved to set Orgia, but we can't set Orgia with his hand because his hand is not the greatest. Because we need Orgia to play. So we can just go Orgia effect, set Mar just in case, I don't know, fucking Azuna or some shit like that comes up. We'll just get the Mar onto the field just as a negate, just in case. And then we'll go Orgia. If, the game decides to do it. Orgia effect, resolve. Obviously, we pay 900 for this. I'm about to do it in 2 seconds. Give me 1 second. We'll do green, green, and green. Obviously, we'll search the green here. We'll pay 900. And then activate green, green effect, paying another 900. I'll go ahead and resolve its effect. I think we just get Tamara. Tamara is fine. 2, 3. And we'll add Tamara. And then now, since we do have Rebirth, thankfully, we can go activate Rebirth, shuffle these 2, and then draw 2 cards. Sol and Luna is good to draw, but drawing multiple doesn't, help us, unfortunately. So we'll draw, or shuffle, then draw. Ashen. Well, what's better than 2 Sol and Lunas? 3 Sol and Lunas, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, this is a once per turn, man. If this wasn't a once per turn, it'd be broken as hell. Then we'll activate Tamara, paying another 900 life points. Resolve the effect. Go ahead and get ourselves Alzonia. Yeah, we haven't triggered Alzonia, right? Yep, Alzonia is the last one we have not triggered yet. Get Alzonia. And then activate Alzonia. Alzonia effect, resolve. if it lets me resolve. Come on, internet. Don't fuck. Why? Why, internet? Don't do it. Don't do it, please. There we go, finally. Okay, we get Field Spell here. Because we can just bounce these guys back to hand now. Man, unfortunately, 4 cards in our hand are fucking dead as fuck. Activate Field Spell. Field Spell effect will bounce both of these motherfuckers back to hand. We'll go effect to set. Again, we can kind of confuse them here. We can just set this off the effect and then just set this, and they'll never know which one is which, because by technicality, they'll never know which one is which. Obviously, you'll know, but it kind of confuses them a little bit. And we'll just set a couple. Man, a little unfortunate, but, I mean, it still ends up working for us, I guess. I mean, Soul Luna is still insane. Like, we can do a lot here, but, you know, having 4 dead cards in hand is kind of unfortunate there. But, you know, you still have Tamara's effect whenever they activate effect. That includes the effect to special summon to flip itself, and then search a card. I guess we can just search for Leon. And then effect to negate a monster on field. You have Alzonia effect to go ahead and... whenever they search you search a card as well. We'll search for Yugioh, and then you banish a card from their hand face up until the end phase. We can even place this guy onto the scales as well, and then go Rebirth effect, banish itself to flip this flip this boy up, and then Book of Clips everything. This gets a counter there as well. And then we can go like Soul and Luna to book a Moon card if we need to, and book our own guy, and then we get Tamara effect once again, which kind of fixes our hand a little bit. We'll get Scorpion, is fine. And then, unfortunately, Soul and Luna is a once per turn, so we can't activate another one, but that's still, like, quite a lot there, right? So, I mean, that's still a lot of stuff. We still have Ash as well if we just need another hand trap. And this was a second counter on this dude as well, which works for us. So, in the end phase, we inflict 1,800. So, again, just kind of have to time your interruptions correctly there. So, that's it for that 5-card sample hand. Now, let's get into our other 5-card sample hand. Alrighty, now on to our final 5-card sample hand here. So again, we'll shuffle up a little bit here before drawing our 5 cards. Draw 1, draw 2, draw 3, draw 4, draw 5. Oh my god, that hand is something. I mean, it works. It ends up working for us. So we can go... Activate Release. Okay, I see how we can do this. So we can activate Release. We'll place the green one out to the field. Just because, again, the green one is very just matchup dependent. Like, obviously, if you're versing Malice, you can just set this onto your field. But in a blind matchup, I probably would never set this onto my field. But go ahead and get the yellow guy out. Yellow. We pay 900 for this. And then go activate the yellow effect, paying another 900 here, and then resolving effect. In this case, we'll get for... We already have Tamara, so getting the Field Spell is not bad, so we'll just get Field Spell. Field Spell. And then go... Honestly, I don't know why I didn't do this. We should set this off of Tamara's effect, just to activate, set this, and then now they, you know, it could be a Mar. Obviously, we know it's Pixia, so it's not necessarily the greatest, but it could be a Mar they might have to worry about. So if they're on like a Zuna or something like that, that could negate that, right? Now we can go Rebirth, shuffling these guys back to the deck and then draw 2 cards. Shuffle, draw 1, draw 2, draw another Pixia, my god, okay. Activate Tamara, well, we can even set this before doing that, so Tamara set this, and then place Tamara effect, resolve, pay, oh, fuck, that's not what I meant to do, I meant to pay 900 first, but this is fine, get Yugioh, and then we pay the 900 after that. And then activate the Yugioh, and this is the last effect we're going to get. I think this one will just get the Mar off of it, because we always want Mar, especially with Rebirth in Graveyard. Mar just becomes better that way. And then, you know, get the card. We have to pay another 900, paying a shit ton of life points here, but we're getting there. And then we can go activate the city effect, bounce these guys back to hand here, and then go Tamara effect, set Mar, Tamara effect, set, we don't even have, yeah, we can just set this, and then set this, and then set Rebirth as just a bluff, you know, because if they end up popping it in Graveyard, it's just another, like, interruption for us, and pass. Like, that's pretty much it for us. Like, we don't have the scales yet, but, you know, this is still a lot of stuff. We have... By technicality, 2 targeting protections, because this guy's not a once per turn Pixia. So we have Mar with the Rebirth. We still have, you know, Tamara and Yugioh as well, which is kind of nice. So it just kind of sucks that we have 2 Pixias. set. But again, they're not once per turn, so it still ends up working. And so again, you still have this as an interruption. You still have this as an interruption. Obviously, you search off of these guys as well, so they can get follow-up. We can get Leon as well. We still have Pexia, which protects us from protection effects. And then you still have Rebirth, banishing this to flip up the Mar. And then Mar just fucking Book of Moons everything, which is crazy as well. Like, this is still insane to think about. This is still very, very insane. Like, this, obviously, we can place things into the scales as well, so you can start getting counters being built up, so you can start trying to inflict damage to your opponent. We still have Ashing in hand, too, so that's just like another interruption as well, but that can be anything, any non-engine that you're playing, right? But yeah, that is going to be it for the combo there. As you can see, what the deck's trying to do, you know, load up the field with face-down cards, and then be a trap deck, interrupt at the perfect time so you get the most value, and then use the counters to burn your opponent out of the game. It's kind of the idea of the deck there. But I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more content on the channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.